Welcome to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. I am your co-host, Joe, joined by Mel. We have a huge episode for you that really shaped how I decided to be a father, and I want to share that with you today.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast, where we guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
A few years ago, I went into a deep dive on why so many young men are struggling with mental health. The primary reasons that the research pointed to were things like lack of purpose, lack of direction, lack of understanding where they are in society. Like they get out of high school, they go through college, and they're not quite sure what that next step is. And these are big transition phases, and they're unsure and unclear of where they stand in it. I happened to be recommended a book. It was called Raising Modern Day Knights. I'm trying to give as much credit as possible because I have sons, so I want to read more about that topic, but we will certainly talk about daughters today as well. And in it, the piece that I picked out was that you need to have these rites of passage. They point to similar research that, hey, the young men basically don't know whether they are a man or not. And society is not doing them a lot of favors. When I was coming home from the rite of passage, I'm going to explain to you today, there is a DJ talking, and Henry heard it. It's like, what percentage of adults consider themselves, I think the term is kidult, like they still play with their childhood toys as a grown adult. 85%.
What?
Still hold on to and have playtime with their childhood toys as a big part of their adult life.
And not with their children, like on their own?
You heard me.
Okay.
They identify themselves as kidults.
Okay.
Kids who just happen to be old enough to perhaps be considered adult. I didn't really get the concept. I was surprised here, but it was ironic that I was coming home from a rite of passage that we were having as a father and son. And so what we decided to do is reestablish some of these rites of passages. Now, they've existed in society for almost all of time. A rite of passage, for example, back in early America was that you were a boy, then you were a mentor. What's it called? Apprentice. There it is. I can't believe you came up with that. I was thinking silversmith. I'm thinking, because all the stories are about people who were apprentice in those type of fields. And then you learned the skill, then you became a master, then you were able to provide for your family. There was distinct stages to the process. This still does exist in a lot of societies, not so much here in America where we're recording this, but it could be as simple as back in tribal societies, you had to go out, kill a lion. If you were successful, you came back, everyone recognized you as a man in that society, so that you knew distinctively in your mind, here's something that I can accomplish, and then here's the result I get out of it. It's way too vague these days. Is it when you get out, turn 18? Is it when you get your first job? Is it when you get married? What about, is it when you get out of college? What if you get out of college and you don't get a job? What if you get out of college and don't get married? Are you not an adult now? Like, it's all vague, lukewarm garbage. And that frustrates me. And the examples I have from the book there that we're sharing is young men becoming men in society. But the examples do exist absolutely for females as well. Do you want to talk on that?
One thing that came to mind first was also people saying, okay, hey, son or daughter, it's your time to be a man. Go be a man. And the kid's like,
man up, whatever that means.
Then the kid's like, well, what is that? So they're left to define it for themselves. And oftentimes that's when things get tricky. And we talked about, we only have sons, but we obviously understand that people have daughters, and this is something that is important for them as well. Now, what I wanted to start with is we took the time, our first step, which was like
Wait, hold on. I'm back you up just a second, because I did share the story that I'll share with you today on the rites of passages with coworkers who do have daughters, and we had a very good discussion on like, what would this look like for daughters? And the answer is pretty much the same. Honestly, it is a little family dependent, and I'll give you some different examples after what we did. One of our family core values is adventure, so we want to make sure that we're aligning with our core values with whatever the rite of passage is that you choose, but it's not a whole lot different. So even though we're speaking from father-son perspective, it can certainly be applied from different ones. So I want to throw that caveat in there. I don't want to say it every time, so that hopefully you understand that it can be extrapolated to your situation.
Of course. And the first step oftentimes is just setting up some definitions. So we thought it was important when we first started talking about this, before we even did the rites of passage, is what is a man? Like, how do we define that for our sons, for you? And obviously this is where I was going to go with this. If you have daughters, you define what is a woman.
And I should back that up. It's what is a good man and what is a good woman? Because there are people who are chronologically a man, but they are not good men. Chronologically a woman, but not a good woman. And so it's, what does success look like if you were to raise your kids exactly right? What is the outcome that you want for them?
Okay. That is a good point to make. So thank you for saying that. So the things we decided, because we had this conversation, just the two of us on our walks and whatever, we thought we need to figure out how to define what a man is, what a good man is, so that when we talk about it with our sons, we're not being lukewarm or just in the clouds about it. We want them to specifically know.
Huge danger in today's society to have the courage to define what these things mean for you, and just not let it be, oh, we shouldn't talk about genders. We shouldn't talk about our specific backgrounds. Okay, well, you know what? You should define what success looks like. If you want to be more vague, define what a successful adult looks like. It doesn't matter, but you still have to, you don't get to avoid defining what success looks like because society confuses you. So I encourage you to have the courage to do it.
So we came up with 3 things. And just like our core values, what's portable is memorable, meaning so if it's too long, it's not going to be memorable and you're not going to be able to use it. And we oftentimes talk about how it's important to introduce certain kind of phrases or language in your home to set roots down, which is what we do with this. So the 3 things we came up with for what we believe a good man is: someone who leads courageously, someone who prioritizes wisely, and someone who is accountable. And what we did was, again, I like charts. We wrote each of those things down on 3 pieces of paper, and we sat down with our boys and we introduced this idea. Here's the 3 characteristics that you need to embody and work on to become a good man. And we sat down for like maybe half an hour with them, and we thought of examples. So again, you can define it, but then it's important to make it practical as well. So we have one of those little bubble things. We put it in the middle, and on the outside, you put all the different examples of ways that they can know that they have that quality.
Yeah, what does it look like when you lead courageously? And they write down examples of life. What does it look like when you prioritize wisely, as in doing your daily habits that you've decided are good for you, continuing your self-growth, and they write down lots of great examples, and then being accountable for everything in your life.
And when I refer to these now, so I've talked on a different podcast about how we have a chart of the things they have to accomplish every day, their daily disciplines like reading 15 minutes and even keeping track of their tech time. So when I speak to them, I say, okay, did you prioritize wisely today? Did you accomplish these goals? Are you accountable for all the things that you did? Let's say, for example, I love this example. So our youngest son, so we have a big age gap. We have 13, 11, and 5, and the youngest is having a hard time learning to ride his bike, and honestly, we have dirt roads, and it's challenging. So the older boys asked me, can you get him some training wheels, and then don't tell him. When the training wheels come, we're going to put them on his bike, and we're going to surprise him. And this was their way of stepping up and leading courageously. And then they took him on the road, and they took their time, because obviously they have to ride slowly to let him keep up with them. But this was them showing courageous leadership. They could have just said, oh, he's slow, we don't want to do this, and made us do it. But they didn't. They took the time. That
would be them being more childlike and not being good young men.
Exactly. And even today, Everett wants to play Legos. The other boys want to do their own thing. And it's, are you prioritizing wisely? Do you think that playing with your little brother for 15 minutes would be a higher priority? So I'm saying this in the podcast right now because it's, again, we define it and then we use that specific language with the kids. It doesn't just live on the wall. We talk about it, put it on the wall. No, we actually contribute this. This becomes a piece of how we speak to them on a daily basis. I think that's the first step, is really setting those definitions, whether it's a good man, a good woman, a good adult, whatever, and having the conversation with your kids at a family meeting or whatever, so they are all on the same page with where you're headed.
I've asked a similar question to a lot of the great women in my life. What makes this great because I'm working on the three things because for our kids, number one, it's not tough to define that. Hopefully they are able to find a good woman to marry and have a great family, strong family. And so we also need to work on that definition. And so I'm leaning on a lot of the great women in my life to see if it is different. Is it the same? Is it what parts of it are different? And so it's been great to expand my own thinking by speaking to them. Mel and I did specifically pick these for a lot of reasons. Number one, accountability is part of our family core values. It's something that they need to carry forward. We don't grow up pointing fingers at other people. Control the controllables. See what you can do to improve your life. And don't blame the weather. Don't blame politics. Don't blame your neighbor. Just that gives up control over your life. You need to be accountable for it. Prioritizing wisely. A child will give in to their whims. Like, hey, I really want to eat cake all the time. That's childlike behavior. And so as you grow up and grow older, you need to learn how to prioritize your life better. And that does take a longer term vision. So it is completely understandable for a child to think that way, but we want them to be able to grow into being good adults. And then lead courageously. We picked specific. I know others have thrown out definitions like rule your household, preside over your household. And for us, that's not the right term because I want to lead courageously, and leading courageously doesn't mean like ruling over something in my mind and trying to exert dominance. And I don't want to teach the kids like that's the right way. Like in some situations, leading means stepping back and letting someone else step up, or acknowledging that someone else can do it better. It's not even your own choice. Hey, I don't have this. I need someone else to lead this situation. And so we wanted to make it about leadership and not get into who's more important, men or women or anything like that. Like that term can be done by anybody leading courageously.
And one thing that just occurred to me, because really I haven't given as much thought to what, if I had a daughter, what these things would be. And I think they would be similar. But one thing that I find valuable and one way that I contribute as mom and wife is communicating sensitively. I'm not sure if I'd use that phraseology, but something with communication, because I oftentimes have the skill set where I can tell when something's off with one of the kids. Or yesterday, one of the kids was being dramatic about their emotional state. And I said, I'd like you to explain to me what's going on so we can move on to the problem solving. I don't want to play this drama game. And it took a few minutes, but he finally shared what was wrong, which was not what I thought it was, because I tell them I oftentimes will assume, and I'm usually wrong. So once I was able to guide him to tell me, we were able to solve like 2 of the 4 problems within 5 minutes. So I think communication would probably be important if we had a daughter for that to be on the list, or we could even include that in these 3. But now that I'm just thinking a little bit more about it, it's almost exciting to reflect on yourself. If you're an adult, you're a mom, you want to teach your daughters how to be a good woman. What are you doing that you'd want them to learn and repeat when they're older? And role modeling is super important, which is part of the leadership piece too.
Let's get into the actual event that was the rite of passage for the kids. And I should rephrase that. There are rites, plural, of passage. This isn't the only one that we'll ever have. It was the very first one. And so they will level up on top of each other, and it will start involving more people that are good adults, good men and women in their lives to help teach them lessons. Because one of the most important parts of the rite of passage is that you are now seen as accepted by people who are also good men and women. That's just like we go back, does society view you as a young adult or a young man or a young woman or whatever? And so you need to start integrating important people in their lives. Didn't do so much on the first rite of passage because this was the introduction, but here's what we decided to do. And I had told my oldest son that this was coming. Hey, I want you to grow up in your leadership. We're going to have an event. And that event's going to be you're going to climb up Pikes Peak and back down. It is almost a marathon. It's about 25 miles total. It is a challenging climb. And when you're doing 25 miles, it's not all climbing. You have to be able to manage your headspace and walk through a lot of boring parts. You have to grind through a lot of challenges. You have to deal with the shifts in the weather, and you have to deal with shifts in how you're physically feeling to continue to work towards an end goal. And so we gave him the map. He had to be accountable for planning the full hike. He had to be accountable for the route we're going to take, the food that we're packing, the food that he packed. He got to lead and walk first because we wanted to go at his pace, and he was the captaining the ship, so that he would know that he is a strong enough person to be able to conquer something that most people view as out of their skill set in their life. And so it's establishing a huge, memorable win. We hike up to the top, and he does a great job. And at the top, I give him a choice. I say, hey, this is Pikes Peak. There's a lot of tourists up here. People drive up. People ride the cog railway up. Listen, I know this hike was hard, and you're probably in some physical pain right now. There'll be no judgment from me. I will either buy you a cog ticket, where you can ride the train back down and immediately be out of this discomfort, or I can give you this envelope. And he did not hesitate. Just give me the envelope. Like, he was almost annoyed that I had asked him, but I wanted to have that moment where he got to choose immediate comfort or pushing through to get something potentially greater. I said, okay, we'll do the envelope. And we climbed down a little bit to get away from all the noise, and gave him the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter that I had given him with some things that I thought about life, and acknowledging, as someone who is an adult man, that he is becoming a man. That acknowledgement's really important. It's not them just trying to get lost in their thoughts. Hey, who do you look up to as a good man in your life? At this age, it's probably his father, it's probably me. And so that me almost passing the torch to him, saying, hey, like, I recognize you now as someone who's a good young man. And the second thing in it was a picture of a watch. Now, the kids know that I don't spend money on a lot of frivolous items. It was a nice Garmin watch, exactly like the one that I have on my wrist right now. And it wasn't just a present. It was a symbol to represent you are now more accountable for your time management, showing up and being on place. You're now accountable for your activities. And now you're also accountable for maintaining something that has high value. This isn't a frivolous little toy. This is a symbol of you growing up and becoming more accountable for your life. And that's why I gave it to him. Now, the conversations were amazing on the way up and down. They were all focused on what to expect in the next stage of life and what value has he learned from previous stages. This is the only part that my throat got a little dusty. And to be clear, there was no water out of the eyes, so it wasn't a cry, it was a choke up.
You really have to say that, don't you?
I want to be clear,
okay,
for clarity's sake. Clarity is kind. And so we had talked about all the value that you can learn as a kid. It's not saying that, oh, you were a child and now you're a man. Like, that child time, you were just a little baby. You're not talking down on it. Like, wow, you learn how to play. You learn so much about life. Your brain is amazing. You learn how to speak and read. You learn how to speak in front of people. You meet people for the first time and learn how to interact. Like, it's been an amazing phase of life. And a coworker suggested this is because I had asked some people who I thought are good men, what else can I do here? And he said, why don't you have them leave behind a little toy that was something that they played with, a symbol of their youth that they don't really use anymore, but create that symbol in their mind where they are leaving behind a small toy, giving it to another child up there in the mountain or throw away or whatever. And then let that be a symbol of them now progressing to the next stage of life. You're leaving behind some of these more childish things as you grow. And again, communication and framework about it, the value of childhood is really important before you do this. And so it was a little bug robot, these little battery powered things. They used to just buzz around the floor. Hex bugs. And they were hilarious. It was endless hours, the kids giggling and watching these little bugs just barely vibrate, but shake around the floor. Mel would always laugh. And it brought back a flood of memories of their childhood that I also need as an adult. And I wasn't expecting this. I need to mourn the loss of some of those times. Like, they are growing up. I need to acutely in this moment realize, hey, they're not that little kid anymore. I need to actually believe these things that I've set up in this rite of passage. It is largely about me as well as Logan. And it reminded me of this Peter Attia saying. I heard it on a video just days before where he was sharing a story of something someone told him, where he said, hey, if you want to squeeze more out of every day and appreciate every day more, imagine if you were 80. And they have invented time travel, and you were to return back to this one day, and you can live this one day, and then at the end of the day, you go back to being 80. How much more would you appreciate every little moment about that day, knowing that you don't get to live it again? And that part got me a little bit, because I am picturing back to these moments that I may have not enjoyed as much as I should have of him playing with that toy. And there was kind of mourning the missed opportunities in life that I had gone through, and understanding like, hey, I need to appreciate every little moment that we're engaging in right here, because this day at the end of it is dead, gone, and will never be back. And just by adding that time perspective on it helps you understand that more, but it doesn't make it less true. Every day only exists once. And so we really focused on the way down to have the conversations that were important about life and help guide him towards what Mel shared is our definition of growing up to be a good man, and acknowledge him that he's moving from a childhood phase into a young man phase as he gets a little bit older.
I want to reflect on what you said about this is as much of a process for him as it is for you. Because I think we as parents, and Henry always jokes about this, he's 5 now, he's not little baby anymore. And he always likes to jokingly point out to me that I'm not going to have little ones anymore.
One of the most prevalent things in parenting, like, joy these days always lasts. They're only young so long. Like, they use the language, but I'm not sure if that's associated with action to actually appreciate it while it's there. But go ahead.
So I think the focus is to appreciate the here and now and the moments every day, and to stop and enjoy. The other day, Henry was helping Everett get some confidence on his bike. He didn't have the training wheels yet, but they were just gliding down the bottom of the driveway with their feet on the ground. And just watching Henry explain and to Everett and help Everett gain some confidence. And he's, remember how 5 minutes ago you were afraid and now you're not? And my whole point here is I just quietly sat on the porch and I just appreciated and watched and tried to make that mark on my mind to not forget that moment. And I took a little video for you because you weren't in town. But my point here is sometimes I think we are drawn to try to keep our kids childlike for our own selfish purposes. And I don't like cheer at the fact that Logan is 5 years from 18. That freaks me out in some ways because I want the kids to stay little. However, I recognize as an adult, as a good woman, that my kids are going to be adults. I need to guide them towards that. So I will say to Logan sometimes, listen, you are 5 years from being 18. I'm not saying 18 is some magical age where he's going to have all the boxes checked. But that is the time when he potentially could be on his own and would need to have the skills to be able to be successful at that. So my reflection on what you said was it's important for us as parents to reflect, to share with our spouse or someone close to us what we're going through, and to make sure that we are not letting that cloud our goals with our kids. So I think that's a really important thing to think about, because I do struggle with that. Even talking about it now, it does get me a little emotional because I want them to stay little forever. Henry asked me in the journal the other week if I could be one age forever, what would it be? And honestly, I pick right now because I still have the little guy. I still have the kids home with me. Like, life is good. But I understand that it would be selfish for me to just try to keep them childlike. Well, you're only kid once. You might as well just keep doing these kid things, which there is value to it. Like you said, there's a lot of value in those childhood things. And I try to help the kids with that same mindset. Hey, Everett's 5, and maybe he doesn't like to play with the toys you like to play with, but he's only 5 now. Try to put the effort there, enjoy today. But my biggest point was we as parents need to also recognize that we have an emotional piece that we have to go through with this, but we can't let it cloud what the kids need to accomplish.
Big piece of allowing these rites of passages to work is our acknowledgement of it. It's like at a job where you get a raise or a promotion in title, but they don't treat you any different. That can't be true in your family. If you give them the promotion, then you have to treat them differently, like they are elevated. And that is very powerful, Mel, because on the way down, I started to appreciate the small things, like how Logan walks. He used to walk so floppy, and now it's a little less floppy. He used to be a little bit of a doughier kid, and now he's not. He's tall and leaned out, and he must be close to 6 foot now. He's getting close to...
He's getting tall real fast, yeah.
Yep. And, yeah, appreciating these things. And, like, on the parent side, the best advice I can give you is just to let the emotions wash over you. Like, I was surprised to get choked up. And I was like, whew, what's this all about? Oh, my goodness. This is an emotion that I didn't expect to be feeling at this time. And just sit in it and almost enjoy it because you've earned it. And You get strong emotions from living a strong life, and that's part of it. And so you can sit in it, but don't immediately try to run away from it and just make it better and just almost sweep it under the rug, because it is part of the process. So embrace it. And so we hiked down.
Can I add something before you move on?
Better be good.
Okay. I always like to try to bring it back to the strong family path. So this is why it's so valuable to make sure you spend time with your significant other, your spouse. Because all these things that you're telling me, like we go on walks and we almost debrief together and we talk about this stuff. And I think that's very valuable, because sometimes it's not, there might be a piece of it that you need to share with the significant other so that you can grow together and see this. I wasn't on this rite of passage, right? This was you and Logan. So of course the whole time I'm like, I want to know what's going on. I wish I had a bird's eye view, but I understand and accept that this is something that you need to do with him. And I just wanted to point out that this is really important to be able to have that one-on-one time with your spouse and be able to like debrief and talk about these experiences as well.
What if my spouse and I are on the same page? Be accountable for where you're at, lead courageously toward the direction you want to go, and prioritize the small steps wisely. Those 3 things we just talked about. Leading, being accountable. It's not easy. It is certainly easier said than done. That's where we need to get at. Anything else before I can finish the story?
You can go.
Oh, thank you. And so we hike down, we hike out, and it was a great experience. And we chatted about it, brought him home. He's standing up a little taller, taking care of some more things, loving his gift and taking great care of it, and setting his alarms and checking his activities and things like that. Now, our 11-year-old is a little bit more mature than most 11-year-olds. He's a little more advanced because he has had the experience Mel has shared with helping the 5-year-old almost grow up. So he's grown up a little bit faster. So we decided we're not going to do these things together. It's one-on-one. So I hiked up with Logan, hiked down. Henry was also ready to learn and hear the message that we were talking about on the way up and down. So I came home, had dinner, got a couple hours of sleep, and then we start again going up Pikes Peak for a second time, just me and Henry this time. Same thing plays out. We get up to the top. He gets the question, do you want to take the cog or would you like the envelope? No brainer, definitely wanted the envelope. So we hike down a little bit and we go through the same process that we did the first time. And the exact same thing happens to me. I tell him about the 80-year-old analogy where, hey, like if I could only live this day one more time, like these moments are so special. Like, I freaking got dusty again. Unbelievable. The throat, maybe it was the altitude. It happened in the same spot, same conversation with both of them.
Stop finding excuses. It's okay.
And so he got a letter written that was more specific to him. It was different than Logan's letter. And so he said this is something that he's going to cherish forever. Like he wants to keep that letter for all of times that I had written that message to him on a small piece of paper. And then he got the same gift and we climbed down. Now, the 5-year-old's feeling left out, not ready to elevate him to the same status. However, he is showing such passion towards basically personal development as a 5-year-old, personal growth, that he had to make a smaller version. And so he said that he wants to go climb the Manitou Incline. It's not 25 miles like Pikes Peak was round trip, but it is a serious challenge that a lot of people don't make. And I think it's about a 2,000 foot climb, maybe a little more, in under a mile. Very steep. It's basically a staircase on the side of a mountain that they used to have a railroad that would go up and down, and the railroad went defunct and they moved it over to Pikes Peak. And people would just start running up and down the railroad ties like a bunch of crazies. And then they maintained the trail, organized it a little bit better so people aren't falling all over the place. And it's a big challenge. And I've had people come out to visit and not been able to do it. And Everett wanted to show that he is growing from being basically a baby to being a boy. And all right, I'll take you. I'm going to practice the patience that Mel has helped me learn. And the next day, after doing Pikes Peak, we set off to the incline with Everett. And the deal was, hey, like, you can bail out anytime. You can walk any steps, no judgment. He took that as a personal insult. I have a video clip of him walking up, and I haven't posted it because it needs some context. Because I don't know why people say this is hard. Like, this is easy. People say this is so hard. This is easy. He's like running up the stairs. Yeah, we did take a break every 100 at the beginning. I was leading a little bit more than I was with the other boys. The other boys got to pick the pace and the trail and whatever. But I was honestly probably holding him back a little bit. Hey, why don't we stop here, get a sip of water, stop here and get a sip of water. And he gets maybe 500 steps from the top. And I'm done stopping. And he just goes like a rocket ship to the top because he has the potential to, such great potential if the mindset is right. And he had a very strong mindset. And I want to celebrate that part where you're starting to be more accountable for your life. You're starting to develop strengths physically, but also mentally. And that was the discussion I had with him. We gave him a little card, gave him a little letter that I read to him at the top to put a flag post in the moment so he would remember it, just like the other boys did. And then we walked out and we just chatted about young life. And it was a very, very powerful day again. So 3 in a row.
And very kindly, Henry, because he got his own new watch, gifted Everett his previous watch. So Everett felt really special to us.
I was so proud of the boys when they had got their gift. The written letter and the picture of the watch wasn't up there. Both of them independently said, wow, now we can take our, because they had like cheaper Fitbits. Hey, we can take the nicer one. We can give that to Everett. Like, without prompting, I didn't think about it. It was their own, both their idea that they want to help lead him towards the life that they are enjoying, and give it to him. And he checks his steps. He said, very funny this morning, he said 259. That's a high number to count to, but not a high number of steps.
I love that so much.
Right when he got off, the kid gets thousands of steps.
Well,
like the kid's a machine.
We make sure that Logan and Henry, the older two, understand what a huge influence they are on Everett's life. So even though you're the primary person to show them what a good man is right now, especially with the older ones, Everett looks up to the other two so much. And the other piece I wanted to make sure that we brought home was the one-on-one. Mm-hmm. This would have been a very different experience if you had taken Logan and Henry together. And I know Everett wouldn't have necessarily done Pikes Peak right now, but I think there's such value in
He wanted to.
Yeah, he did.
I had to talk him down.
And I think in his mind, he thought he did Pikes Peak. Like, he thought the incline was Pikes Peak. And I don't want to crush his soul, but I want to make sure he knows that is something he will do at some point. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to make sure that we think about that one-on-one time. And whether it's a rite of passage or just in general. Yesterday, Logan had a friend over and Everett was hanging out with them, and Henry appreciated having some one-on-one time with me. So, and then when it comes to a rite of passage, which is a more distinct activity or event, it's important to do it one-on-one. And I'm excited for what we come up with for the next step.
Yeah, I have no idea how long this episode's been. I just want to get into the story and share it with everyone because I think it is so powerful and important, regardless of the kids that you have, the gender of the kids. Like, this stuff is critical to help them grow up to be adults. And so I'll hit you with a little summary as best I can. You can fill in the blanks, Mel. The purpose is that these kids have lack of purpose in their lives. They grow up and they're not sure if they're an adult or not. And so it's our role as parents to help provide that definition for them so that they know what success looks like and they know what will serve them well in their lives. Ours are, for a young man, that we want them to lead courageously, prioritize wisely, and be accountable for everything in their lives. Still working on the definition if we had daughters, but it's going to be very similar. The next thing is you have an event so that they can demonstrate those behaviors, have some moments during those events and critical conversations like you would only have with someone that's becoming the next level. These are mano-a-mano conversations. Talk about the critical things in life and don't leave them guessing, because like I talked about earlier, that has all the mental health issues. They have no idea where to go, where they're at. Like, it must be very frustrating if this stuff isn't done. So you have your memories, and then I would make it last by continuing to talk about it. We didn't talk about this. Have some great pictures. They have the watch on their wrist. We're going to put some pictures up on the wall so that they can know that event happened. And the last piece of it is make sure that other people who fit your definition of being a good man or good woman recognize them as joining the fold. And that will really help them grow into the next phase of life with your guidance. And the PS caveat asterisk is that you're going to have some emotions about this, because this is also your recognition of a passing of time. And as adults and parents, we want to try to squeeze on, like, throw the brakes on time. We can't. Let's be accountable with how we use the time, and let's use it wisely, and let's help lead our young children into a strong life.
The only thing I really want to add is leading courageously, prioritizing wisely, and being accountable. That can be embodied in creating your family values. So if you've taken the time, if you don't know where to start, and I think maybe hearing the rite of passage, it's exciting, but sometimes everybody wants to just be handed the playbook. Just go do this. And I think the magic truly is in you doing it for your own family. So your values might be similar to ours. They might be wildly different than ours, but take the time to create the values, because a lot of where this idea came from of your rite of passage with each of the boys was because one of our values is be adventurous. And it embodied these different pieces of being a good man. So I think the first step is to take that time to create those values and start to live them out. And then maybe something will come up where you realize, you start brainstorming about what a rite of passage could be for your individual kids.
I'll give you one more bit of food for thought. I've used this analogy a few times before, but at some point we're going to be relegated to being pictures on someone's wall. We will not exist anymore. We'll be pictures on our children's walls. When they look at that picture, what are they going to say to the people around them about you and your life? Did you teach them how to grow up? Did you wrestle with the emotions yourself and be vulnerable with them and help guide them and give them the tools that they will now pass on to the next generation? Or they can look at the picture and just say, they were good people, they did the best they could. This is an opportunity for you to make a multi-generational impact by putting this together for your family. I think it's definitely worth the squeeze. And if you are going to do this and it's made you think a little bit about life, do send this episode to someone else that you think it'll impact. We're going to continue putting out the content. We're going to continue sharing the stories as we get to the next level of rites of passage with the kids, as long as we're seeing some more ears on the podcast and things are actually making an impact in people's lives. And so drop us an email over at strongfamilyproject.com. Follow along. You get the steps of the path completely free over there on the website. You can just download it and learn about setting these values and coming up with these definitions, and everything is a guide for you there. So if you've enjoyed it, please do share it and visit us at strongfamilyproject.com.